Welcome. Hope everyone's had some beers and stuff and is amenable to this talk now. This talk is called Devopsing it, which is kind of an anti-pattern word in DevOps. But the reason I called it this is because I recently heard a story about a good friend of mine who went to a company to do like a agile transformation, all that kind of good enterprise stuff. And someone very senior was like, I hear that these production issues are recurring to their senior engineer, and they said, I thought I asked you to DevOps that, and they expected never to hear about it ever again. So this talk, though, is not about doing that. It's more about 3 or so things that we found from 2 years ago to now that we were able to do that kind of delivered value really quickly for our product engineers and helped them kind of serve the NHS, keep patients and healthcare staff happy. So you're at Accurx now, so you know kind of where we are. Just a little plug, otherwise Lauren will be angry at me that we're hiring. So if you like this talk, come and talk to us afterwards. My name is Bharat. I'm a DevOps engineer here. I've been here for about 2 years. So watched the company grow from kind of paying down our infrastructure debt all the way now to like we're building an internal platform, a product that our people can use, it's been a good journey, and I'll take you through some of that. Final point to note is that obviously these 3 things are things that we did in our specific situations. They helped a lot, but in your situation they might not. So come talk to us afterwards if you're curious about whether it's going to work, let's take it away. Cool. So before we even go into like DevOps, principles or practices or whatever, we're all kind of have different definitions about what DevOps means or how to do it. So could I actually get a show of hands who feels conflicted when I mention the term DevOps team? Not that many. I actually feel conflicted despite being on one myself. So that's interesting. So the reason that I feel conflicted is because, the whole ethos of DevOps is supposedly not to have a team. But let me define DevOps first, and then we'll talk about why we needed a team. So we tend to think of it as a culture and practice. So we try to avoid having a team as much as possible. But the idea is that like if you want to move fast in certain areas, you can do it through your kind of people who are building your product. You can make sure that they're doing the DevOps thing, but you will be a lot slower. So we kind of decided that we have to accept that we need a team and we need to do that to move fast. But we also accepted that this is a short-term thing. We're now moving more towards the kind of platform thing. You'll be glad to hear. We're focused on basically being fluid enough to like as a scale up meet the needs of our doctors and patients. So to set the stage, 2 years ago we were here. Basically, someone spun up a DevOps channel. Thankfully, they didn't go, let's silo all of this stuff and keep it away from product engineers. As you can see, it's about discussing interesting things seen in production and staging. Basically, Mike, as you can see on the 2nd of September 2019, started this channel. So people that saw issues happening around our Slack could kind of discuss it with each other and help each other solve the problem. Just continuing to set the stage. When I joined, we spent basically 2 weeks not doing much work, but just listening to our users, and our users being internal product engineers. And we asked them, how do you deliver code? Like, what do you do when you want to spin up a new feature? Who do you talk to? Do you talk to your product manager? Do you talk to user research first? Things like that. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and we find out that they did have a lot of problems. They do have a lot of needs, and which kind of gave us validation that this team thing might be a good idea because so far in the 5 years that the company was live, all of these problems seemed like they should have been solved, but they weren't. So so we spoke to them. We came up with these kind of big ticket items of things that we wanted to solve. They are a mix of kind of user research, intellectual kind of leaps of faith, that we had to make. But that is not what this talk is about, because these things will take a long time. This talk is about the kind of smaller tickets that we thought would immediately deliver value for our users, and do it in a way that we didn't have to invest kind of too much to start with. So let's get into it. So our first kind of practice that we wanted to implement was shortening feedback loops. So every time we spoke to people, every single person was like, we use this thing called trunk-based development. So we want to keep our trunk branch, we call it, clean, releasable to production. Nobody should have to ask a question, can I release this code to production? It's just, you assume that that branch is free. Unfortunately, that made people very nervous about trying out experiments, which you necessarily have to do when you're trying to find product market fit. And they wanted a way to basically, try out their changes, show it to a bunch of people without having to go to trunk. So the first kind of intervention, so to speak, that we did was branch previews. So a way for people to deploy things without having to merge to mainline, talk to their product manager, talk to their user researcher, and even validate whether it was working. We saw this feature get taken up almost immediately, mostly by front-end teams to start with, and then the back-end folks got involved as well. And I think at the time we were maybe 5 front-end engineers, and they all kind of had done 60 deployments using a branch preview to quickly kind of validate and share that knowledge with their PMs and stuff. So we saw it adopted really quickly. Another kind of good DevOps concept is you build it, you run it. I can see a few laughs here. I think taken the right way, this is a good thing to do, but obviously very, very difficult, especially if you have a team where people just want to chuck stuff over the wall to you to implement it. We did it in a few different areas. So one is in building our infrastructure. So infrastructure as code, of course. We initially found that we weren't getting a lot of adoption because it was just this kind of black box of oh, this is just the stack that holds all of the infrastructure for the company. And so we saw it used better when we kind of tied it to what the users of our platform, how they thought about the products, and they thought about it in terms of the microservices that they had. So we kind of have all of our infrastructure go along with all of the application code. And we saw that, in fact, once you set it up like that, people were very willing to get involved. They wanted to learn about what goes on behind the scenes of our infrastructure, and they're very up for also using the components that we wrote to kind of make their lives easier. And that's kind of carrying on. So that's been a positive thing to see. We also do this in building our product. So this page pretty much hasn't changed since I joined, and what it says is basically product teams own specific components and the monitoring which goes with those. So the idea that whatever you build, as long as it's helping you serve your product, that you own it, has been kind of culturally the stage was set before I even arrived, and our product engineers, big shout out to them, are really good at kind of taking shared ownership and working with us to figure things out, rather than just going, oh, this sounds like an infrastructure issue, I'm gonna hand it over to those people over there. And finally, there is a need we found for you can't have everyone do everything all the time without any kind of restriction, but also you don't want to kind of stop them from doing whatever they need to if they do need to. So our role request philosophy is that basically anyone can request any role that they like. Initially, we restricted the how you actually get that approved to be a small group of senior engineers, but we later kind of agreed with our CISO and everything that what would be ideal is if you couldn't approve your own role, but you could kind of ask anyone else in your team to do it. And so if people have enough context, they usually, we find that they do the right thing. So yeah, that's been a positive thing. The one thing I would say about this is that always write down why people are asking for these temporary privileges. In a few cases, it's highlighted the need for someone to go and build a bunch of automation. That means that they don't need to kind of do these risky actions anymore. Cool. And finally, blameless postmortems. So we had quite a good incident process already in that, the team, when faced with an incident, someone would, out of good graces, like spin up a channel, involve the right people because they had the context on who those right people were. They would, work together to fix the issue, and then most importantly, have a kind of postmortem afterwards to really understand what happened and why things go wrong and how could we prevent it from recurring. We later introduced a tool, Incident.io. I don't know if anyone here has used that, but it's great because like all of the stuff that we were doing, it kind of did for us. So it was almost a no-brainer in terms of like spinning up these channels and getting the right people involved. And we found, as you can see, towards the right side of the graph, it starts to get more dotty. And so we're hoping that this, my sense of this is that it's not actually more incidents, it's that people find, because they are helped in the incident when they create a channel, they're more likely to create more incidents. And so hopefully, next year we'll have really good data on, how long incidents are taking and why they're actually happening. But it's been a positive thing to see actually more incidents being opened. Cool. And yeah, here's a bonus one is microservices. So I know it's a bit of a love-hate relationship that we have with microservices, but we decided to kind of go for it, and because the application design meant that it was really easy to tease out little bits of services. We do that whenever we get the chance, but we leave this big monolith in place, so we don't kind of commit fully to this buzzword and then find ourselves in a scaling issue. And so we found that this was a useful thing if used with caution. So I would definitely, if it's not obvious to you where to carve out your little microservices, then don't do it just yet. Just wait; it'll become clear, and then it becomes a lot easier. And of course, there's a lot of it's just a completely different way to operate. You have to think about the traffic flowing through your system and what happens when the fault lines that used to be just within the application are now across the network. Things get much more complicated, so do be careful. Fine. So now what do we have is that, as I said, we're going more towards the kind of platform team structure. We have this really nice mission statement that our VP engineering came up with, which is that we're building the platform so product teams can meet user needs at lightning speeds without getting in the weeds. It's been a good kind of unifying philosophy for us. We can all get behind it. And so I think at this point, we're going to be about 12 or so in the platform team. We definitely think it's a good direction to go in, but again, we're not too tied to a particular structure. We'll just kind of keep changing things as our problem changes and our kind of business needs change. And that's it. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.